welcome aboard HMS Common Sense, Mr. James Price, the biggest, girtest, bestest babber of the lot of them. Hello there, my darling.
Hello there, how are you?
I'm all right. I've just made the commute from our shire today as a new resident of the Sticks. Tell you what, it's a nice place to be. Didn't even lock my back door last night. Brilliant. Anyway, I'm sure that you watched the news conference today, Nigel Farage announcing mass deportations. One of the elements that he was talking about is trying to essentially rumble the judges who block these deportations, the immigration lawyers who shower themselves in a faux moral rectitude from being able to have their own way and prevent deportations. And it seems to me that this is already happening across Europe. In fact, Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, has abolished the automatic assignment of lawyers to people facing deportation.
It's interesting, isn't it, that this whole legal apparatus isn't actually unique to Britain. We've seen this right across Europe, and I think it must be a combination of the European Union and the kind of increased legalization of politics right across the continent because of the EU and because of changes that have happened to the ECHR, the European Court of Human Rights, that adjudicates on the European Convention on Human Rights. Because, of course, like all things in Europe, it's got to be really inefficient and have two names with the same acronym just to try and confuse people. But it does seem interesting that we've moved away in Britain over recent decades from the old common law way, which is, let's take the example of the tree outside my window. Unless there's a law that says I'm not allowed to climb that tree, there used to be a kind of presumption of legality that I should be allowed to go and climb that tree. Whereas the kind of Napoleonic code that spread across a lot of the continent was there has to be a law that says you're allowed to climb that tree. And I'm being slightly facetious with this, but that's the broad way that things have been on the continent for a long time. And because of all these damn laws that came out of our membership of the European Union for a long time and had to spread uniformity, whether it was in London or Paris or Vilnius or Riga or Athens or wherever else it may be, you had this kind of creeping legalization and the rule of law replaced with the rule of lawyers. It's interesting now that not just in Britain are we seeing a fight back, but as you say, in Germany, I know that Giorgia Meloni in Italy is trying to push back on this as well. And of course, it's been done so effectively on the other side of the pond as well, where they haven't had to deal with the ECHR, and Trump is able, by executive action, to get a control of their borders and control of much else as well.
I mean, what is so interesting about Germany being the people to, I mean, they're not necessarily the first people to do things like, is it Poland who turned around and said, or Denmark, saying we're not going to take any more asylum seekers? Or maybe it was both of them, I don't know. But it seems Europe are ahead of us, actually, when it comes to getting tough on this issue. But the interesting thing about Germany now getting tough on this issue is arguably it was Germany who started all of this.
Well, yeah, let's go back 10 years to Angela Merkel and Wir schaffen das, or we can do this. This idea that she just one day decided to let 1 million people from the third world into Europe, and especially on its way to Germany. And then when there were mass rapes the first New Year's of this happened, they tried to lean on various media outlets and all the rest to stop these stories coming out. I mean, she's very lucky, Angela Merkel, that the bar for worst ever German leader is quite as low as it is, right? It's taking a long way now with Merz, who's actually the guy that she beat 20 odd years ago, coming in now trying to fix this. Is it going to be enough? Well, probably not, because the Germans have got a coalition where the losing party at the election, who've been in charge for the last 4 disastrous years, the SPD, get to stay inside the government as the junior coalition partner, and they're probably not going to allow all of the sorts of stuff that will be needed to fix Germany. And what's going to happen then? Well, the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, support for them will grow yet again. And it is an example why we're lucky we don't normally have these kind of backroom door coalitions that happen too often in Britain. But it does show that all European countries are in the same basket, exactly as you say, X, because Merkel started this by letting in so many people who are totally culturally incompatible with the continent of Europe.
Yeah, do you know what? I reckon that woman should be dragged up in front of the Hague for treason in Germany. Every single rape, every single sexual assault, every single terror attack. There was a period of time where there seemed to be a terror attack once a week coming out of Germany. Stabbings and car rampages. And I think that woman's got blood on her hands. I don't know where she's got into hiding, but it's about time Mutti Merkel was brought out from the shadows and was held accountable for what she did, not just to her own country, but to a continent continent, and all of her apologisers and applauders in the mainstream media who thought she was the best thing since sliced bread. Absolutely shocking. Let's talk about this. Fast-track asylum bills process is going to be introduced. The average time for decisions is currently more than a year. Apparently some clever bods are going to be brought in, a new independent panel focused on asylum appeals to help reduce the backlog. Is this good news, the fact that we're not going to be shoving people in hotels for years at a time where they get up to Lord knows what and it's costing us a shed load of money? Or is there a risk, actually, that what we're going to do, given the approval rating in the UK for these people seems to be about 75% compared to about 40% over in France, that all these chancellors and Lord knows who and ne'er-do-wells who have come over on small boats are just going to automatically be allowed to stay?
It's not good news at all. There's this idea that Yvette Cooper, the hapless Home Secretary, seems to think that what people in the country are angry about is the taxpayer bill for the hotels and nothing else. I mean, that is just ludicrous, right? If that's what she actually thinks, I mean, I hope it's probably not what she thinks, but she's trying to pretend that that's what it is. And then she's got another thing coming. 20-odd years ago, when Tony Blair was still Prime Minister, he at least acknowledged that most of the people who make asylum claims are bogus, they're economic actors, all the rest of it. He said as much in a speech, I think it was to the Institute for Government or the IPPR or something like that 20-odd years ago, and said as much that this is not true. And back then, asylum approvals were about 5%. Today, they're over 2/3. Do we really think the world has got that much more dangerous? Bearing in mind he was saying this at the time when he joined in with the Iraq war that Alistair Campbell lied to everybody about and all the rest. No, I don't think so. I think he at least understood this. The problem that we've got now, Alex, is that if you do, as you say, have these people moving from the expensive hotels into what they try and call HMOs, because it's always good to have another acronym so people don't know what's going on. HMO just stands for houses of multiple occupancy. Basically, a normal house on a residential street, next door perhaps to where people listening and watching to this show are living right now. You shove a bunch of these guys into these places while they're waiting to be approved. And then rather than go, you know that Ibis in Gloucester, to use our home city as an example, where people know, let's stay away from there in case that these people about whom we know nothing. We don't know whether they're Shakespeare in the making. We don't know whether they're members of ISIS or any of the rest. Well, instead of going, at least we can sort of steer clear of that bit of town. Maybe it's the house next to us. Maybe it's the one over the road. Maybe it's the one next door to your granny. And we don't know anymore. Yeah. And then what you're going to have, if these people are as dangerous as a lot of the statistics coming out say that they are, and we know how many examples of crimes being committed by these people, or the Iranian terrorists who got smuggled through a month or two ago, it's all gone very quiet, that, hasn't it? Well, we'll start seeing these horrible cases happening in more and more residential streets and all the rest. And then, of course, what are they going to do to actually fix it? They're just going to approve with a big stamp huge numbers of these people and say, right, you can all stay now. In a few years' time, they'll get indefinite leave to remain, then they'll get citizenship, and then they'll be voting for the same Labour Party that gave it to them.
Do you know what? I hate those blimmin' hotels. I hate those hotels. But like you, James, I like to know where they are and I don't want to go near them. And also one assumes, even though people seem to be able to freely come and go do what they like, work on the black market, deliver nosh and all the rest of it, at least it'd be a bit harder to kidnap a 12-year-old from the school gates and drag her back to one of those hotels. I'm worried when we set up essentially terrorist frat houses around the country, quite what these young men are going to get up to.
Yeah, absolutely right. Look, I'm not laughing because I think it's ludicrous. I'm laughing because it's such a farcical situation that we've got ourselves into now. What was it over the long weekend? Another 900 people came over. And I learned recently that, by the way, they do put one woman or child on most boats so that they can call 999 and make sure that the British Border Control will go out and get them and make sure they get in safe. But almost 90% of these people are fighting age men. Are they all members of ISIS? We don't know. We know that some have been terrorists. We know that's a plot that these terrorist organizations have been trying to do. Even if they're not radicalized by some, terrible interpretation of religious ideas, the case that's happened around Epping, without going sub judice or contravening the case, as has been reported, the Crown alleges that one of these people went up to children and said, "I'd like to make a baby with you," right? And obviously this person denies any of the charges or anything like that. But that's what we've heard reported today from one of these trials. Is that an isolated incident? I hope so. I suspect not.
No, and it is so ridiculous. People's concerns. I don't care what nasty, flea-ridden hellhole of a tyrannical regime these people are fleeing anymore. I don't. Because I'll tell you one thing for sure. The good folk of Damascus aren't losing any sleep at night about Jade, who lives in Woking, who hasn't been able to get any social housing and has an abusive partner, and now is even further down the list waiting for a home for her and her kids. No one is losing sleep over that in Dubai or Damascus or anywhere, are they? They don't return the favour. They're not worried about our homeless people. They're not worried about, Lucy Connolly, are they? They're not sitting there reading the newspaper and, oh, well, free speech in the UK ain't looking too good. Perhaps we should all give them a home over here. Why is it that we, as a nation, are supposed to somehow be a sort of charity receptacle for the whole blimmin' world? What do we owe Syria? I don't get it.
It's a very, very good point. It's a very good point. And yet this is the sort of mindset that we've got. There's one Labour MP, I won't even dignify by coming up with her name, but she said we should keep taking people in basically until we're bursting at the seams. Because what does it matter if you've got to queue a little bit longer to get a doctor's appointment? What does it matter if your child's education is a little bit worse? What does it matter when we can help the poor people in the world? And that's what these people think. And it's not just the Labour MPs, although I'd love to have a go at them all day. Gus O'Donnell, now Lord O'Donnell, who was the Cabinet Secretary under the later years of Blair and through Gordon Brown and I think the start of David Cameron's term, is on the record as saying most people assume that the government's main job is the national responsibility or the national interest. I think it's the global interest, and that's the most powerful civil servant in the country, which makes him probably the most powerful person in the country. That is the mindset that they've got. And maybe if we were still pooping out money before the financial crash that we pretended that we were, that would all be well and good. Maybe if we didn't have a massive housing crisis, maybe if the economy had never been touched by Rachel Reeves and was going absolutely great guns, maybe that would be okay. Maybe if we had no problems with the NHS, maybe we had no potholes, then you could start having a conversation about how generous to be. We are not a rich country anymore, and that is something that no one seems to understand, that we're going to have to get into our heads. And but I think by the time of the next election, that will come crashing home when we realise that the debt interest payments that we're spending are way, way up, way higher than the little spike under Liz Truss, way up to the point where we may have to get an IMF, an International Monetary Fund bailout. We are going to be completely broke. And you're going to see a budget in a few months that's going to make it that much worse, because all Labour know how to do is put your taxes up and keep putting spending up on the unwilling and ungrateful and all the rest of it who don't need it. And more decent people who make a decent crust in this country are going to look at their pay packet, look at the taxes coming out. They're going to leave. Taxes are going to go up again on everybody else, and that cycle is going to continue until we are totally bust. And we're going to end up with a country that doesn't have the kind of high talented British people in it we want, or attracting, by the way, the highly talented international people like Mrs. Price. We're going to end up with the third world who've got no cultural compatibility, and all they want to do is be advertised young women they can come and harass, and that's what Britain's going to be. And the last one of us will have to turn the light off.
No, I totally agree.